Before humankind ever walked the earth, our planet endured ages of chaos and rebirth. When volcanoes ruled the skies, oceans turned to poison, and life itself clung desperately to existence. Ancient Earth's darkest days, the battle for survival begins, takes you back to a world both alien and familiar. A time when nature tested its own creations, and only the most resilient survived to shape the future we now call home. In the ancient age before memory, before names and nations, the earth trembled under the weight of its own becoming. Volcanoes split the land like open wounds, and the sky bled fire. Oceans boiled, and the air thickened with the breath of a dying world. Life, fragile, trembling, divine, fought to hold on. Yet even as species vanished and forests turned to ash, something unseen endured, the pulse of consciousness itself, echoing through every form, every lifetime, every soul that dared to return. Among the ruins of that forgotten age, in a civilization swallowed by time, there lived two souls whose bond would defy extinction itself. One was Kyle, a warrior forged from fire, fierce, loyal, bound to protect his people from the chaos devouring their world. The other was Soraya, a healer who spoke to the winds, whose hands glowed softly when she touched the wounded, as if the earth itself whispered through her veins. Their city stood on the edge of a dying sea, its once brilliant temples dimmed by the ash of endless storms. Soraya had long been warned by the temple seers that love would be her undoing, that her heart, if given freely, would awaken forces best left asleep. Yet when Kale returned from the battlefield, his armor cracked, his spirit weary, and his eyes filled with the sorrow of all he had lost, she touched him, and destiny changed its course. The first time their hands met, the earth itself seemed to pause. The flames outside flickered low, and for a heartbeat, even the roaring mountains fell silent. It was as if the universe held its breath, recognizing the reunion of two ancient fragments once torn apart by the tide of existence. Their love bloomed in secret, not in the halls of kings, but in the sacred caves beneath the temple, where glowing crystals pulsed with an inner light. There, between echoing chants and the scent of burning resin, they spoke of eternity. Carl would trace her face as though memorizing it for another life, and Soraya would whisper, "If this world burns, we will meet again, in another dawn, beneath another sky." But love, in times of great dying, is a dangerous fire. The same energy that bound them began to awaken something deep within the planet itself. An ancient resonance, the heartbeat of creation. The seers had been right, two souls merging beyond the bounds of fate could disturb the delicate rhythm of existence. When Kyle and Soraya defied the decree to separate, the skies darkened, the earth split, the sea rose, the great dying began, entire species vanished, continents cracked and folded into the sea. The air grew thick with poison, and the temples fell into the waves. Yet even as their world crumbled, the two lovers held each other, whispering not of despair, but of remembrance. Soraya pressed her hand to Kyle's chest and said, "Even if this body turns to dust, I will find you. Across lifetimes, across death, I will remember your soul." And then, silence. The world went dark. The great dying consumed them both. But the universe does not forget love. It carries it, encoded not just in memory, but in energy, in the subtle currents that weave through the atoms of all living things. When the storms ceased, and the earth began to heal, when new life slowly emerged from the shadow of extinction, the ancient bond remained, invisible, waiting. Thousands of lifetimes later, under the pale glow of modern city lights, two strangers crossed paths. A woman, an intuitive, drawn to forgotten books, old temples, and the feeling that she had once known the language of stars. And a man, a soldier of the modern age, restless, haunted by dreams of fire and oceans swallowing cities whole. They met by chance, yet nothing about it felt accidental. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the noise of the world faded. He saw her not as a stranger, but as something achingly familiar. The way sunlight touches a place it has always belonged. She smiled, and the air around them seemed to shimmer. That night, they both dreamed of the same place. A temple buried in light. Two figures standing hand in hand as the world burned around them. When they woke, they could still feel the warmth of another's touch, the whisper of a name they couldn't recall. As days passed, moments of déjà vu became rivers of recognition. The sound of the wind carried echoes of ancient chants. The stars seemed to arrange themselves in patterns they had once traced together, and though neither spoke of it aloud, both knew something sacred was returning. They began to meet often, not out of longing, but out of remembrance. Love, they learned, was not about possession or desire, it was about reflection, the recognition of one's own soul in another's eyes. In quiet moments, when the noise of the modern world faded, they felt the hum of that same ancient energy, the rhythm that had once broken the world apart, now softly healing it. And so, the Great Dying was never just a story of destruction, it was a story of transformation. From death came renewal, from separation came awakening. For even as the earth itself was reborn, so too was the love that had once burned through worlds. In the end, love is the one force that survives extinction. It moves through time not as a memory, but as a vibration, whispering through the stars, breathing through the earth, and guiding lost souls back to one another, again and again, until all that remains is remembrance, pure, eternal, and whole. Out of the silence that followed the Great Dying, the earth lay still, a wounded world breathing in darkness. The seas had turned to glass, the air trembled with the faint hum of beginnings, and the land, though scarred, whispered softly to itself, dreaming of renewal. What had been destroyed was not the end, it was a pause, a sacred stillness before the next great inhale of creation. From the ashes of that cosmic sorrow, life began again. Tiny forms stirred beneath the surface, fragile, invisible, yet infinitely determined. They were the first songs of resilience, the first breath of courage after despair. Every pulse of energy, every stirring cell, carried within it the memory of what had come before, not just the memory of life, but of love. For even in extinction, the echo of two souls, Kyle and Soraya, had woven itself into the fabric of Earth's rebirth. Their energy had not vanished. It had dissolved into everything, into the waves, the soil, the wind that whispered through the new forests that would one day rise. Their love became a frequency, vibrating through evolution itself. Every new creature that took its first breath carried a fragment of their promise that even after death, something sacred always returns. 1,000 lifetimes passed, the earth healed, continents shifted, forests grew where ash once lay, and amid this rebirth, humanity emerged, curious, searching, and restless, as if haunted by an ancient memory they could never name. It was in this new dawn, and the pulse of modern civilization. She was an artist this time, a woman named Amara, who painted not what she saw, but what she remembered. Her canvases were filled with temples no one had recorded, skies no telescope had seen, faces that felt both distant and intimately known. She dreamed of fire, of oceans swallowing cities, of a man whose eyes she could never quite capture, always just beyond her reach, as if hidden behind the veil of time. He was Elias, a traveller and former soldier, a man haunted by déjà vu. When he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of a city carved in stone, a woman bathed in light, and his own hands, trembling, covered in dust and blood, reaching for her across the end of the world. They met at an art exhibition. One of her paintings caught his attention, a temple beneath a red sky, two figures standing hand in hand before the waves. Elias froze, his heart pounding. He had seen this place, not in dreams, but in something deeper, a memory. When Amara turned to greet him, the air seemed to hum. It wasn't recognition of the face, but of the soul. For a brief moment, the centuries folded into one breath. The world around them faded, replaced by flashes of a forgotten age. Kale standing beneath the burning sky, Soraya's eyes shimmering in the sacred light, their hands reaching, their love forbidden, their promise. If this world burns, we will meet again. The moment passed, and yet everything had changed. As days turned to weeks, they found themselves drawn together, not through romance as the modern world understood it, but through a gravitational pull of remembrance. They spoke of dreams they couldn't explain, of feelings that didn't belong to this life, and when they sat together in silence, the air between them shimmered with something ancient, something that felt like home. Through Amara's dreams, fragments of the old world returned. She would wake in the middle of the night, tears on her cheeks, whispering his ancient name. Kyle. She saw visions of the Great Dying, the mountains erupting, the sea swallowing their city, his arms around her as the world dissolved into light. Elias, too, began to remember. In meditation, in stillness, he would feel her, not as a person, but as a vibration moving through his body, through time. And he realized, love is not linear, it is circular, eternal, always returning, always seeking itself. One evening, they stood beneath a modern skyline glowing with neon light, yet the stars above shimmered just as they had in the ancient age. The same constellations, the same silent witnesses. And in that moment, Amara said softly, "We did not come back to relive our sorrow. We came back to remember our strength." Elias smiled, understanding. "And to finish what we began, to heal the earth through love, not war." Because this was the true meaning of the rise of resilient life. That evolution is not merely biological, but spiritual. The earth had not only rebuilt its ecosystems, it had evolved consciousness itself. Through suffering came awareness. Through extinction came empathy. And through love, the most ancient force of all, life had learned how to endure. The healing of the planet, like the healing of two souls, was never about forgetting the past, but transforming it. The energy that once tore the world apart now pulsed as compassion, creativity, and connection. Kyle's fire had become Elias's courage, Soraya's healing touch had become Amara's art. Their reunion was not an ending, but a continuation, a reminder that love, in its truest form, is remembrance. It is not the need to possess, but the willingness to recognize. Not to hold, but to see. As the night deepened, the stars shimmered brighter, as if bowing in reverence to the return of two souls who had walked through death and rebirth, through time and silence, to remind the world of its own resilience. And somewhere, in the ancient memory of the earth, a whisper echoed, soft as wind over stone. Eternal as light, nothing that is truly loved is ever lost. It only changes form, until it finds its way home. The earth does not forget. Beneath the surface, in the molten heart of stone and fire, memory moves like a slow and ancient river. Every eruption, every storm, every tremor of the land is not just destruction, it is remembrance. For nature, too, has a soul. And sometimes, when old wounds ache and forgotten promises stir, the planet breathes out its fury to remind creation of its balance. Long before humanity's rise, when continents were still finding their shape, the earth convulsed once more. Mountains split open like old scars. The oceans roared as if recalling the grief of ages past. The great dying had already reshaped the face of existence. Yet this new upheaval came not as punishment, but as rebirth. The planet was purging its pain, making room for new life to take root. But beneath these natural rhythms, something deeper stirred, something older than time. The memory of two souls, Kel and Soraya, woven into the very pulse of creation. They had once defied the laws of destiny, their love burning brighter than the stars, awakening the earth itself. Though their bodies had long turned to dust, their energy remained imprinted within the elements. The warmth of the sun, the calm of the sea, the whisper of wind through the trees. And it was through nature's fury that their love continued to move, shaping, breaking, renewing. A thousand lifetimes later, in the age of glass towers and digital skies, the same story began again. Amara and Elias, two strangers still haunted by dreams of an ancient world, stood now on the edge of another great shifting. The planet trembled under modern hands. Forests fell, seas rose, and the balance of nature, that sacred equilibrium, began once more to tilt. Yet within this chaos, something profound was awakening, the same cycle of destruction and rebirth that had once bound their souls. One night, Amara dreamed again. She was standing in the ruins of a forgotten temple, the same one she had painted, the same one that had appeared in her visions since childhood. The air shimmered with heat. Sacred flames danced along the walls, illuminating symbols she somehow understood. The ground beneath her feet rumbled, and she heard a voice, calm, familiar, echoing through her bones. When the earth trembles, it remembers. And when it remembers, love returns. She turned, and there he was, Cal. No longer in armor, no longer bound by flesh, but light, pure and radiant. His eyes held the warmth of every sunrise she had ever seen. "We are not here to stop the fire," he said softly. "We are here to become it, to guide it, so that it may cleanse, not destroy." She reached for him, but the temple dissolved into light. The next morning, she awoke to the sound of distant thunder. The city beneath her window bathed in stormlight. She felt it then. The same trembling of the earth that had once ended worlds, now reborn as a call for healing. Go, go, Elias felt it too. While on a journey through the mountains, he witnessed the raw force of nature. A landslide carving its way down the valley, thunder echoing like the roar of an ancient god. But instead of fear, he felt reverence. He knelt in the dirt, pressed his hands to the trembling ground, and whispered words he didn't understand. Words that felt older than language itself. In that moment, he saw flashes. Not of war, but of awakening. Soraya's hands glowing over the wounded earth, Kel standing beside her as they called upon the elements to heal the land. He realized then that their story had never been about personal love alone. It was about the love that connects all things. The same love that binds fire and water, death and life, endings and beginnings. Nature's fury, he understood, was not vengeance. It was memory. Every storm is an echo. Every earthquake a heartbeat. Every rising tide, a reminder that creation itself is alive. And through that realization, the modern world and the ancient one began to merge. When Amara and Elias reunited once more, it was not in a temple, but in a quiet forest clearing after the storm. The air was heavy with the scent of rain and soil, the same scent that had lingered in their ancient world after the fires had burned away. They stood together in silence as the first stars emerged from behind drifting clouds. Amara took his hand. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. "The earth is remembering." Elias nodded, his voice low. "And through us, it is healing." They closed their eyes, and in that stillness, time dissolved. The heartbeat of the planet rose beneath their feet, pulsing through their bodies like music. It was as if the entire universe was breathing with them, ancient and new, wounded and whole. Images flickered in their minds. Volcanoes erupting, mountains rising, forests blooming where there had once been ash. The fury of nature, once feared, now revealed itself as sacred rhythm, destruction as creation, chaos as renewal. And through it all, they saw themselves, not as two separate beings, but as energy moving through lifetimes, guiding the planet toward balance again and again. When they opened their eyes, the storm had passed. The air was clear, the stars bright, and in that luminous stillness, they finally understood love, like the earth, is eternal in its cycles. It burns, it breaks, it renews, and in its fury lies its grace. Nature does not destroy for cruelty's sake, but to remind life that it cannot grow without surrender, and so it is with love. For what was once lost returns in new form. What was broken is remade through remembrance. And every ending, no matter how violent or sorrowful, is only the earth and the soul learning how to begin again.